everyone. This is Natalie Shurtleff, Associate State Director of Advocacy and Outreach with AARP Connecticut. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Tea with AARP, our biweekly interview series on the issues important to people 50 plus in Connecticut and their families. Today, I'm joined by two guests, Kristen Cusato, the Director of Communications with the Alzheimer's Association Connecticut chapter, as well as volunteer and caregiver Tonya Maurer. Welcome.
Thank
So
you.
Tonya, why don't we start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience as a caregiver?
Absolutely. And Natalie, thank you so very much for having me on your show today. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm humbled to be here. So let me start a little bit about myself. I'll be somewhat brief. I was born and raised here in Connecticut, as was my mom. My dad was actually born and raised in Massachusetts. When they got married, they actually both lived in Connecticut. We grew up on Coventry Lake. My dad actually passed away in 2006. And then mom found that she was really maintaining a fairly large home and a large chunk of property up in Vermont, because they actually moved up to Vermont in 1988, right after I got married for some reason. I don't know if there was a connection there or not. But dad, like I mentioned, passed away in 2006. And when mom realized how much work it was up there and that she was really getting up in age, she decided that she was going to move back down to Connecticut. And I was plumb thrilled, because in 2016, she moved in with myself, my husband, and our two furry dogs. And she purchased the house next door, which was a total joy to have her nice and close. She was our daily dog walker, so it worked out lovely. So when she moved in, we renovated the house. And then in September of 2016, she moved into the home next door. The interesting part of that is my husband and I saw some kind of quirks about mom when she was living with us. Didn't really think anything of it. And then in 2017, she invited me to a doctor's appointment, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. What I didn't realize at that point in time was that I was actually doing a lot of caregiving, and I didn't know it. It totally sneaks up on you. It's very organic. And then bang, it's like you're full on in everything for your loved one. Fast forward to 2020, I was actually laid off from my corporate job, as a lot of people were across the globe, and I wasn't able to find work because of the COVID shutdown. I made a decision at that point to actually stay home and be a full-time caregiver, which again, as I discovered, I had already been a full-time caregiver, but also was doing a full-time job, maintaining my own house, maintaining mom's house, yada, yada. So when I was laid off, it actually gave me a little bit of relief, because I was able to even do more for mom. The other aspect of that, though, as I noted, is caregiving becomes very organic and sneaks up on you. You end up immersed in all aspects of your loved one's life. That's a drain, not only emotionally, but also financially. So what we found was that we were starting to really drain our retirement savings, because we're paying for healthcare, medical expenses, all out of pocket, our daily expenses, all out of pocket. Because if you're under the age of 65, you're literally on your own financially. There's not much. And if you start pulling money out of retirement funds, you get hit with penalties. It's not a pretty picture. When mom was moved into memory care, at that point in time, I felt that it was time to go back full time to work, which I did. But now what I find is that caregiving doesn't go away when your loved one moves into a community, any kind of community, skilled nursing, assisted living, or memory care. you become more of a care advocate. And now being a full-time employee, I'm on the road a lot. I'm now finding that I have a balance. There's this struggle of finding time to actually see mom, be with mom, and continue being a advocate for her. That's kind of where our journey is right now. But mom right now is living her best life to the best that she can, and I'm supporting her along the way, as is my sister. So that kind of is our current story.
Thank you so much for sharing. And, you know, I think your story is unique to you, but also can provide such support to other caregivers. So
So true.
many of our viewers are caregivers. What's one piece of advice that you have for other caregivers, particularly people that may be new to caregiving?
Oh gosh, thank you so much for asking that question. This is so hard for caregivers because caregivers, we get into a space where nobody can caregive for our loved one like we can. And we don't really like to relinquish that control. I liken it to a parent dropping off their child to daycare for the first time. Are they going to be taken care of? Who's going to be watching out? Who's going to, wipe their nose when they have the sniffles? All that type of thing. It's very, very similar. My advice to not only new caregivers, but also caregivers that have been in that space for some time, there's help. You're not alone. Find a support group. It is so relieving to be able to share your story with other people that understand. They either know what you're talking about, but have a different situation, but it's always similar, but different. And then realizing that going to support groups is hard because then the question is who's going to take care of my loved one while I'm gone? There are resources. There are aides that can be brought into the home. There are services that have staff that can be brought into the home. Even though we know that nobody can take care of our loved one like we can, sometimes you just need to let that part of you go so that you can actually find some time for yourself.
I think that's actually a nice transition, talking a little bit about some of the resources. So pivoting to you, Kristen, can you tell us a little bit about the Alzheimer's Association and some of the resources and supports that you have for caregivers like Tonya?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us, Natalie. And Tanya said it so well. You are not alone. And when you do get hit with this disease or a diagnosis of this disease, I liken it to the family getting hit by a Mack truck. So you're in pieces and you don't know where to start. And so calling the 800 number that we have, which is the 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, it's 800-272-3900. By calling them and saying, I need some help. I just had a diagnosis in my family. Where do I start? We can help put you back on the road together and guide you, have these barriers, have the I don't know, keep you within the lines, keep you on the road to continuing on this journey, but yet realizing you don't have to just go through it by yourself. As soon as you get diagnosed, you can call that helpline and you can say, I need an hour-long conversation with somebody in my state to help guide me. Boom, you get this hour-long care consultation with someone. Or you could come to an office, one of our offices. The Alzheimer's Association is across the country. So if anyone else is watching this, there are like 68 chapters. So call that 800 number and you'll be connected. Support groups are so critical. And it's kind of like Goldilocks, right? You might not find the right one when you go into the right one, the first one, but sometimes they're virtual. Sometimes they are in person, post-COVID kind of coming more into in person. Virtual kind of works for a lot of people because you just have to step into the other room and you don't have to get someone to watch your person who has the disease or, not maybe discuss personal things or challenging things in front of the person with the disease. So virtual's working pretty well. Support groups all different times of the day and evening. And again, you might want to just find the one that works for you. We have adult children support groups. We have male only support groups. We have spousal support groups. We have support groups for people who have the disease. So if you have the disease yourself, you can go to these groups and you can kind of talk with other people who are having the disease. We have GAP groups, which is Giving Alzheimer's Purpose, GAP, which is one person in the couple or spouse or father-daughter or mother-son or mother-daughter. One person has the disease and it's the other caregiver, and they both come in. And what I see is that when you come into a room where you see other people like you, no judgment zone, the shoulders drop. And those caregivers can breathe for a minute because they don't have to explain everything. It may be that my person interrupts you. It may be that my person is picking up food with their hands because they're forgetting to use utensils. It may be that my person doesn't know where the bathroom is, even though they've been 4 times. So just having other people around you that get it. Plus, we have people go on really great trips with our early stage activities. Just so that people can be together and enjoy. We also have education programs all over the place. We have classes in everything from know the 10 signs to effectively communicating with your loved one when it gets hard later on, which Tonya can talk about later. One of the most important things we say is go into their reality. But you know how hard that is to do? You are realizing that your person is not thinking the way they used to. Their brain is not working the way they used to due to a brain disease. So going into their reality is really challenging because you don't want to accept, that they are going to be wrong a lot. It's hard. It was very hard for me with my mom as well. So we have all sorts of education programs, and all these things are free of charge. And then we have advocacy efforts, which I know, Natalie, you know very well, our public policy guru, Christy Koval, and Tonya as well, going to meet legislators and sharing your story, going to not only the state, we have a great lobby day in the spring, but also even going down to Washington, D.C. and sharing your story it's just really, really powerful, the different things you can do. Share your story on media, which I've had time to do a number of times. And then we have, different fundraisers, et cetera, because obviously we're a nonprofit and we need to help do that, but also, and then I'll stop talking and have time to talk again. Research. We fund great research here in Connecticut, and it's really exciting to know what we're funding, what we're looking towards. We're really excited that we're in this era of treatment with these 2 new medications. And the Alzheimer's Association funds about $1.6 million in research right here in Connecticut at UConn Health and Yale. So lots of resources and lots of things for families along the journey.
Thank you. Yeah, that's certainly a lot of great things you do. I know I worked well with Christy on some of the advocacy work. You guys do some great work, both in Hartford and down in Washington. So Tonya, she had mentioned that you might want to talk a little bit about those education efforts. Do you want to jump in there?
Oh, I'd love to. One of the mantras I have is destigmatizing dementia. Right? Not just Alzheimer's, but dementia as a whole. There's so many. Alzheimer's is kind of the leading diagnosis, if you will. Sharing our stories, just doing a table event at a farmer's market is so amazing because you can tell when somebody is like, I need to talk to somebody because they walk by the table 3 or 4 times. Every single time they get a little bit closer, and then they come back and you listen to them, and you can see, as Kristen had noted, the shoulders go down, right? They just relax because they're talking to somebody that understands. There's no judgment. There's no questioning of what they're doing. You listen and you share what resources are available. And the Alzheimer's Association is amazing. Their well of resources is so incredibly deep. And you can just see people go, oh, I didn't know that. Or I didn't know I could do a virtual support group. Really? And there's one just for men. That's a big deal. The education to even be able to do the education sessions and allow people the forum to talk and just ask questions without feeling uncomfortable, it's worth its weight in gold. It's just amazing. Yeah, and communication, like Kristen mentioned, learning how to communicate with your loved one is huge, because when you put logic brain on, right? Why do they keep doing that? Why are they asking that question 12 times? You need to turn that logic brain off and say, I need to meet my loved one where they are. I use my mom as an example. I was there in the morning. I said, hey, let's go brush our teeth. She looked at the toothpaste and the toothbrush, said, okay. I walked out of the room and I heard her talking. And I'm like, oh, that's strange. I went back in and she was reading the instructions on the toothpaste. She had forgotten how to brush her teeth. So you have to kind of understand the situation, no judgment, and just try to cultivate it. But yeah, education programs are amazing. Highly, highly, highly recommended.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that story. I think that just really illuminates what, the reality is for people. So Kristen, is there anything that we haven't covered yet? I know you already talked about a lot of the resources. Is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers?
Yeah, a couple things would be great. I want to talk about volunteer opportunities, and I want to talk about Bring Me Back Home, which Tonya can help me with that a little bit. So we, like Tonya, some people choose to volunteer to give back while they're in the throes of caregiving. Some people choose afterwards, like it's too much to be able to be a volunteer. And my gosh, we respect everyone and are so grateful to all our volunteers who do so many things. We just had our last walk of the season. We have 6 walks every fall, and it was in Hartford at Registler Field, which was cool. You can walk through by the Jumbotron in the stadium, and Tonya was there. And there's just so many people. And I feel like when everyone holds their flowers up, which you can see behind Tonya and behind me, the flowers are for different parts of the journey. When everyone holds their flowers up, I really feel like you're being held, like almost like you could crowd surf on those flowers, because everyone there gets it and everyone there has you. So we've got you, and your colleagues and your peers and people you don't even know have got you, because everyone there gets it. Everyone there understands the journey at one part or another. So we had a bunch of folks who helped us set up, a bunch of folks who helped us clean up, people who, like Tanya, will go and do tables at like all the fall festivals or spring festivals or holiday strolls. We have the informational tables just so that you can reach a few people. A few people each time is plenty, because we want people to realize that they can go places, that they can turn to places. To get support and to get help. We don't want people to say, gosh, I wish I knew about you guys back then. I wish I knew when my mom was diagnosed. So what our job and my job in communications and concern and awareness is to let people know, so that it's in the back of their mind, so that when they get that diagnosis, they're like, oh, I think there's an 800 number, or I think there's some place that I should call. Also, getting information to your doctor's offices, so that when in fact they have a concern about, you bring your person with those memory concerns to the doctor knows where to send you, knows what to give you, a diagnosis in one hand and resources in another hand, right? We need to make sure that that information is out as well. So people can volunteer in so many ways. They can become advocates, which is no policy necessary. All you need to do is be able to share your story, like Tonya said. You can become a community educator. You can join our DE&I committee. You can join us in media. You can join us in our office and put some things together to send out. You can help us by forming teams, joining our TLD, which is the longest day fundraising. Help us at our gala, which is in the spring. So many different things that you can do. We have a place for you. So please, come to our website, alz.org/CT. And then Bring Me Back Home, I'm very excited about, because we're at a year. Can you believe it, Tonya, already?
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Wow.
So state police and the Alzheimer's Association work very hard to create a safe registry where people can register the person with the dementia, and it's information that only law enforcement can access. And it's on a Connecticut website. And this is for if, in fact, someone wanders, which 60% of those with dementia will wander. Their information is already in this registry, so that if you call and say, Tonya calls and says, my mother wandered, my mother's not here, she walked out the door, immediately they can access them. And there's a recent picture. There's a place where they used to live, which they may wander to, place where they used to work, nicknames, information about grandkids, all sorts of different stuff that they can pop up, and it can immediately go out to all the cop cars, so they can search right away, because every minute counts when people wander at that age. And I know Tonya has, I know that you're kind of trying to wrap, but maybe Tonya can share your quick story about your mom and how important this is.
Yeah, I can. Would that be okay, Natalie? Yeah.
Definitely.
When my mom moved into assisted living here in town, I was lucky it was here in town. 2 years ago in November, it was about 30 degrees out. She walked out the front door, and she wanted to go home. Had she taken a right at the main intersection in town instead of a left, the outcome would have been incredibly different. She showed up at our house at 11:10 at night, poked her little head in the window. My husband was watching TV. The dogs went crazy. It was a very grounding moment. I remember running down the stairs, and the first thing I did is I hugged her. I made sure she had a coat on, she was warm, and I just held on to her for dear life because I knew if she had taken a right, like she was going to walk back to Vermont and go see Dad, who had passed at 30 degrees at night, she would not have made it that evening. So we were lucky. So as Kristen noted, the registry, Bring Me Back Home, is paramount for anybody that has a diagnosis of dementia. Highly recommend. My mom is on that registry, even though she's in memory care right now, which is basically a locked-in community. You just don't know what might happen. They take bus trips, they go out, they go walking, you just don't know. They're safe environments, but if you take your loved one out, you go to the hairdresser and you turn your head, it's just like a little child. They could just wander off into the crowd, right? So it's just a very safe feeling to know that that registry is available, and it has all the current information about my mom and many other loved ones out there. So highly recommended. Thanks for calling attention to that, Kristen.
Yeah, no, I think it's a powerful story. So and we're trying to have that not happen. So thank you very much, Tonya. And Tonya was involved in sharing her story back when we had a press conference about it a year ago. So it's a year in, probably about 500 or 600 people have registered across the state. And we just really want to increase that number. So you'll hear more about that. That's ct.gov/BMBH, Bring Me Back Home. And I think we have exhausted your time. Natalie, thank you so much for letting us talk and talk and talk. We could talk about this stuff forever.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for having a robust conversation and for sharing, your powerful stories, Tonya, and for you sharing all of these resources, Kristen. So Tonya, I'll give you, also an opportunity for any final thoughts that you may have.
I'll just do a big exclamation point. When you're in doubt, call 1-800-272-3900. It's 365 days a week, 24/7. When in doubt, just pick up the phone. Somebody, a real live person, will answer the phone.
Great. Well, thank you. So thank you, Kristen and Tonya, for joining us today. And thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in to another episode of Coffee and Tea with AARP CT. So join us again in 2 weeks for another episode, and catch back episodes on demand right here on our Facebook page or on YouTube. So scan this QR code to become an e-advocate and to help advance policies important to the 50+ in Connecticut. Thank you all.